Namaskar. The government announced the Atal Innovation Mission in the budget speech of 2015-16, and it was given to NITI Aayog to design what is likely to come out of this mission. And NITI Aayog set up an expert committee on innovation and entrepreneurship, which submitted a report and on giving various ideas about the importance of both innovation and entrepreneurship for an economy like India. And to discuss much of those recommendations, we have with us a very eminent panel. We have with us Dr. D.K. Saraswat, himself member NITI Aayog. We have the CEO of NITI Aayog, Ms. Sindhu Shri Kullar. We have Professor Devang Kakkar from IIT Bombay. We have Mr. Binod Bhavri, an entrepreneur from the Northeast, and Mr. Mukesh Chattar is an entrepreneur based in the United States. Thank you very much, all of you, for being with us. We'll start with you, Dr. Saraswat. Firstly, what is the importance of innovation itself to transform any economy?
Innovation actually is the engine of growth, and unless you have a innovation culture, we will not be able to take our economy from where we are today to the levels which we have anticipated. And if you have to really make contribution in that area, we have to really steer the innovation strategies in such a manner that all kinds of innovation which will lead to the growth of economy are attended to. For example, an innovation for improvement of efficiency, innovation for improvement of new products. Bring any idea which is going to lead to wealth is what is required to be channelized by this process of innovation.
Mr. Chattar, what about, we live in a very technical world, a technology-driven world, and in such a world, where do we stand in terms of India, stand in terms of the state of play, in terms of innovation?
If you look at where Chinese were 25 years ago and where they are, so compared to them, we are way behind. Compared to developed countries such as the United States, we are certainly way behind. But I think the momentum is shifting and we are picking up the momentum. And if we continue on that roadmap, at some point we should catch up in next 2 or 3 decades.
Ma'am, India prides itself on having a large demographic dividend, but we need to create about 1 to 1.5 crore jobs per year for a decade to fully utilize this advantage. What are the main impediments that the committee found in terms of fulfilling this kind of potential?
The committee has given a very extensive set of recommendations. The main point of it being that if there is an innovation ecosystem which encourages the innovators to become entrepreneurs, then the entrepreneurship will spin off several million jobs, which is the right way to approach the issue of harnessing the demographic dividend. So the biggest advantage for India is going to be that innovation will spin off several entrepreneurs. There will be several million entrepreneurs, and all of them presumably will spin off in their own term several million jobs. So that is the way in which the committee has approached the question of innovation and entrepreneurship, and specifically answering the issue of how it works for India.
Mr. Bhavri, you yourself are an entrepreneur, but let's say the committee has suggested in this Atal Innovation Mission that it follows a 3-layered pyramid approach for entrepreneurship, short, medium, and long-term approaches. What kind of ecosystem is aiming for?
What we are looking at is, if you look at the 3-stage pyramid system, we are actually concentrating the recommendations that we have given is for the first pyramid, where 4 or 5 things that we say, if they are effectively done, it can change the country. For instance, the grand challenges. It can change the rural economy totally with the grand challenges. What we are saying is that, well, also innovation is related to process innovation. And there we are recommending that the government should change its working process very simply by putting in objective measurements and processes in place. We are also saying that, well, the government could encourage, the Prime Minister has been saying why there are not Googles and Gs from India. Now we have given a model how the Gs and Googles could be promoted from India without any cost to the government. Now these are the ways that we are looking at the first structure.
Dr. Saraswat, how do government schemes like housing for all or rural electrification fit in with the recommendations of the committee, sir?
I think they are all part of the, actually if you see the pyramid structure, they are all part of the bottom of the pyramid. Because if you look at the economy required there, it is again linked to the innovations which we can make in the technology, which will bring down the cost of the housing, which will also bring down the energy cost, and also the way we are going to distribute, that if we can have a gridless energy distribution system, certainly it is going to make a lot of difference. So that's the kind of innovation which we are looking at. And each one of them will come in the today's programs what Government of India has taught. If you look at smart cities, we are talking of IoTs which are going to happen for the smart cities. It's all part of the innovation scheme. And all that what this committee has recommended will certainly get linked with the various schemes which Government of India has indicated, which includes housing and power and water and health and so on.
Professor Kakkar, well, when we can look at this also from another way, we can look at it as 3 layers of incubation, startup, and scale up. And as a man from the academic line, what kind of hand-holding do you think a company would require in terms of the incubation level? Or should the government be playing a role at all in this?
I think incubators play a very important role, and particularly in an environment like India, where entrepreneurship is not so common. Most children coming from the middle classes would prefer to take up a secure job instead of starting their own enterprise. An incubator is a place where someone can go and get a lot of support. In some sense, they're sheltered from many of the difficulties that they would have faced if they were not in the incubator, like things like subsidized rents and support for things like marketing, HR, and so forth. And so this helps a nascent company grow into something stronger and then essentially go into the market and compete with all the bigger companies.
So is there a corporate role in funding incubation, and what about also linking incubation with R&D to universities?
So corporates have a big role to play, and in fact they are playing a role. They have a great interest in promoting companies which could become their suppliers. They could also think of promoting companies which do complementary things that they do, that perhaps enhance their product in some way. And so we are seeing a great interest. And in fact, in our institute, we have a major healthcare company that wants to see many more such companies grow out of the university. And so they are actually putting a lot of funding to support such nascent companies to set up. So corporates have a big role to play. And of course, government also has a role to play in different ways, in addition to seed funding, but also in terms of ease of business and so forth.
Mr. Chatter, one of the main suggestions or the major suggestions of this expert committee is to throw up grand challenges, which Mr. Bhavri has already referred to. Now, how exactly does this work?
The whole idea is that there's 150 crore rupees which will be subdivided into 12 different challenges ranging between 10 to 30 crore rupees. And anybody who's coming up with a good idea who can solve the problem, it can be tested and verified, then they basically get the reward. So for example, to find a battery which could be half the cost of the current lead acid battery, but at the same time is not consisting of toxic elements, somebody could have 30 crore rupees at the end of it. So that's a great idea to promote it, and not to say that additional companies and foundations could not join the rewards. So this could actually create a river out of multiple streams coming in for each of these problems. So that could be fascinating actually to solve.
And what layers is this, are the grand challenges available to? Is it only at the incubation level, or is it at the intermediate level? Or, can it even be used for big ideas like smart cities?
It's available to everybody and anybody. So it could be a person in a garage, it could be a student or a faculty at a university, it could be a large enterprise who wants to get into a solar panel business and come up with a brilliant design which cuts the cost by half. So it could be anybody and everybody. Bottom line is, let's solve the problem because it's going to help a lot of people and make a lot of money in the process.
Ma'am, how can we link entrepreneurship with the major nationwide programs of the government?
Entrepreneurship is already being addressed as a specific sector-specific issues by the Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprises, by the Department of Industrial Promotion and Policy, government and the Science and Technology Ministries and the Biotech Ministries. So it's not that it has not been part of the government's concerns for some time, but this is for the first time that the committee has tried to point the way forward in a very specific manner to say that government must own the top end of the chain. It must kickstart the process of starting an innovation ecosystem, own the innovation ecosystem, and most important of all, build into the ecosystem the possibility of failure. That is one of the biggest lessons that the committee has underlined for government, which is that in most of our programs, we presume that once the input has gone, whether it's money or resources, the results will come. But the committee says, in case the results don't come, find a way of factoring it in, because when they do, they will completely change the picture. And second of all, when the results come, learn how to measure them. Learn how to measure them, and that is how what Mr. Chatter was fond of calling it throughout the committee's deliberations, that when is done actually done? Can you actually measure the done part of it and tell the world that yes, this idea has succeeded and this has not? But government is totally involved from stage one. Many committees had looked at it, many of the government's departments are looking at it. But once the idea takes off, from the idea to the innovation and is ready for funding, the entrepreneur is then out in the big bad world. There are many departments in government which will look after them.
Mr. Babri, well, India is the bright spot in the world economy currently, and government has also laid great emphasis on ease of doing business. As an entrepreneur, what do you think, I mean, as the recommendations of the committee for ease of doing business?
If the government does four things, if they say that, well, look, I will see that non-value added work you don't have to do. All right, for the purpose of returns, statistics, you need certain data, you take those data. But don't make the entrepreneurs do non-value added work. This is number one. Number two is that you give policy support. Number three is you make things easy. And number four is that see that the facilities available, let's say the infrastructure available in the country, is as good as anywhere else. India can simply rise. India can simply rise.
Dr. Saraswat, so I mean, we understand that any economy requires a good ecosystem and innovation brings about change, etc. But can we have all the majority of the innovations that are taking place are in the IT space, in the information technology space? Is that necessarily good for the whole economy?
I think sectors we should not single out. All sectors need to be promoted as far as the innovation is concerned. But yes, you can fix priorities depending upon the resources available. IT sector is one area which is going to help in a big way as far as the future programs are concerned. For example, IoT, smart cities, e-health, e-education and all that. So they are all going to contribute to the economic health of the country. Number two, they are also going to be part of the social economy, what we are talking of. But in the quest for IT, we should not miss out the major requirement of engineering innovations, because wealth creation on a steady basis, on a sustainable basis, comes through engineering innovations, and those have to be nurtured.
Professor Thakkar, one of the problems is that there is a mindset in our country, maybe cultural, that we don't like to take too much risk. There is risk aversion. How does one change this? Because really, to bring about innovation, you have to be a risk taker, isn't it?
Yeah, I think this is really one of the big sort of hurdles for entrepreneurship on a large scale, because there are very few people who are willing to take this risk. And I think we can imagine why people are afraid to take this risk, because the consequences could be dire, if you fail. I think the committee has quite clearly mentioned that we have to somehow build this sort of culture where people are, encouraged to take the risk and not punished if they fail. I think this is the key aspect. The second thing is, of course, that we have mechanisms that help people succeed, and then mechanisms like safety nets which can catch them if they do fail. That the consequences are not so dramatic if they do fail.
And what are these mechanisms, sir?
So, for example, in universities, many of our young graduates go and join either they go and join a startup or they do their own startup. If they fail, then the campus allows them to come back for placements in the campus itself with their juniors. So in that sense, that is a safety net that they can get a reasonable job even after trying out a startup. So I think many of these mechanisms can be put in place which would in some sense mitigate the risk.
Sure.
But at the other level, I must mention that we are actually a nation of entrepreneurs. That is, most people have their own, a very large number of people have their own businesses. They are often family businesses or traditional businesses like shops and so forth. So that is really very common. I think the kind of businesses that we are talking about and the ones that we are trying to focus on are those which have the potential to grow from something small to something very big. I think that is really the one that is going to produce a lot of growth in the economy and also create a lot of jobs.
Right.
So how do we nurture those kinds of businesses? And Mr. Bowry was just talking about how can we create a GE or a Google in India. And that is, they started with 2 people and now they have, thousands working for them.
Mr. Chatter, how exactly can we do that? Because how does the United States do it, for instance?
If you look at it, Microsoft, Google, Yahoo, Facebook, Snapchat, all of them came out of the United States, even in Europe. So what we are trying to do is to bypass all these processes in the middle and go straight to the heart of it, which is air conditioning power consumption, for example, does not bother the United States at all. But in India, it's about 40% of the operating cost of air conditioner. 40% is of the procurement cost is operating cost. If we can bring that down by 30 or 40%, we actually have changed the demand on the power side. These things will sell like hotcakes, and there could be dramatic change where you're selling millions of these units. And literally, I believe, within a year or 2 of developing this technology, we can have our things which are bigger than GE or bigger than Google, in fact. You could do the same thing with battery, for example. There's a more demand in the world, more than probably 100 million vehicles today. If we could transform them with a good battery which can work on electrical vehicle, anybody who can come up with it could actually have the world and have a combination of GE and Google and many more in one company. So I think this is a remarkable opportunity where we are right at the cusp of things, where if we can solve Indian problems, we are solving Chinese problem, we are solving Indonesian problem, we are solving Pakistani problem, we are solving actually problem for 5 billion people. So I think that's a remarkable opportunity, and we could actually, with some luck, have companies in a short time, if with some luck, obviously, and the execution has to be key, but it could be 5 times bigger than some of these companies. And China has proven that. A grand challenge is one way, but look at it this way. If anybody who's coming up with any one of these, a VC or any other investor will be out of their mind if they wouldn't want to put money in. I think there'll be line at the door, in fact, to wanting to put money in. If people are lining up outside Uber to put money in at a valuation of $50 billion today, I think there will be line outside of these entrepreneurs if they come up with good ideas. So I don't think funding will be an issue. The challenge is, can we initiate it where people actually have the basic money through grant challenges so they actually can? So I really believe this government has done one remarkable thing. In 68 years, nobody has done, no government actually has done it, which is to use the technology as a tool to make a direct impact of the bottom 70% of the population, and then use that as an approach to sell it to outside world as well. And that's something that has never happened before. So I'm delighted at least that the process has started.
On the financing part, the government's Mudra scheme addresses the issue of providing funds to the small entrepreneur. Then a new fund called the India Aspiration Fund has just been set up, which will again allow access to new entrepreneurs as well as others who are accessing funds from the government side. There are other such available avenues, and the government support for initial investment is aimed at all entrepreneurs. Not all of them may be innovators, but certainly all innovators have to be entrepreneurs.
Professor Kakkar, what role do you see any greater role for universities to help in this whole process of innovation and entrepreneurship in terms of, also raising the entire standards of our universities itself?
I think that universities play quite a unique role in entrepreneurship. There's one type of company, and you.
Sir, let me stop you here. But most people who are coming out of our universities are not becoming entrepreneurs. So that is the point. Right. They're all looking for jobs and secure jobs.
Most university graduates would take up jobs, and this is true all over the world. But we do want a substantial number to become entrepreneurs themselves. To promote this, there is actually a whole movement that is going on in the country. One of our alumni, Ramesh Wadhwani, has started something called the National Entrepreneurship Network, which is networking colleges across the country, and literally hundreds of thousands of students are getting an exposure to what is entrepreneurship, what is required, what could be the benefits, what could be the risks, and so forth. So students at quite an early age are at least exposed to the opportunities that are. In our institute, we have a regular program where entrepreneurs come and conduct courses, and they can students can actually earn a minor degree in entrepreneurship. So this gives them at least some knowledge of what is it to be an entrepreneur. And then there's a second type of entrepreneurship that universities in some sense specialize in. And this is often the entrepreneurship that arises out of the research that is done in the universities. Very often some breakthrough research is done, and then, either the professor or the student starts a company based on that research, and they essentially come up with a new company. So I think these are the two ways in which universities really play a big role in the entrepreneurship ecosystem.
Professor Kakkar had said earlier that we are a country of entrepreneurs, but the entrepreneurs that this committee is talking about, that innovation and that kind of entrepreneurs, can we become a country of those kind of innovators and entrepreneurs?
Mukesh has given data that we were a country of entrepreneurs, we were a country of innovators. We were a country of innovators. There has been, I think he gave us, last time he gave us a data that 5,000 years back, there was an innovation to drill.
Yes, the dental machine.
The dental machine.
So we have it, and I see it when I go around India, and if I go around Europe, if I go to America. On the whole, the Americans are not entrepreneurs. We are much better entrepreneurs than them. It's a question of getting the right
direction,
right support, the right policy. We can become definitely a great country as far as innovation and entrepreneurship is concerned, and that's the base of all economy.
Finally, sir, let me ask you this question. The Prime Minister said, "Start up India, stand up India," and government's overarching theme is "Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas." So, how does innovation and entrepreneurship help in bringing about social inclusion?
In fact, the entire recommendation of this committee is focused on that particular aspect. If you see the bottom of the pyramid, where the 70% of the population and the entire business where the employment can be generated is through the innovation schemes which are recommended here. And if we can really implement all of them with the focus which the present government has given, we can certainly take our global innovation index from where we are today, somewhere close to 80, to the levels where the other countries like China and all are there in the region of 30s. And that would be possible only if we hit that 70%. That is a social inclusion. Innovation is a chain from creativity, when you get ideas, when you filter those ideas and convert them into wealth through the process of development, research, or whatever way you do it. Any innovation has two segments. Number one, it creates wealth, and since it creates an enterprise afterwards, it also gives employment, and employment and economy are linked together. So it solves both the problems. So today, if the government of India is looking at taking our GDP to whatever levels, 8%, 9%, 10%, the only vehicle which we have is innovation. And it has to be done in all sectors of our economy, whether it is the service sector, agriculture sector, manufacturing sector, health sector, everywhere. and all the new technologies which are emerging should be dovetailed into giving innovation that right flip.
Thank you very much, gentlemen and ma'am, for being with us here on this discussion. Well, I think the sense is very clear that India is a country of entrepreneurs. We are a country of billion-plus people, a billion-plus ideas, that means. And with the correct environment, the correct ecosystem that the government is committed to giving, this can only flower into proper innovation and entrepreneurship for the future. Thanks very much for being with us. Namaskar.